السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
وعليكم السلام.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين، أما بعد. فقد قال الله تعالى في كلامه المجيد: فجعلهم جذاذا إلا كبيرا لهم لعلهم إليه يرجعون قالوا من فعل هذا بآلهتنا إنه لمن الظالمين قالوا سمعنا فتى يذكرهم يقال له إبراهيم. Respected brothers and sisters, the long title of my speech you've already been made aware of, and inshallah I'll try my best to do justice with this topic. Speaking of rujuliya or futuwa, what is called in English masculinity, when you think about this topic, the first ayah that comes in mind, at least it happened to me, was the story of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala narrates that story. He says that He made them, the idols, into fragments. Illa kabir lahum, except for the biggest one. He did not break it. And he was hoping that la'allahum ilayhi yarji'un, when these people will come, they will inquire about who did it, what was the motive. And that's how the discussion will begin. That's how I will make them understand my point. So they came back. And they looked around and they said, Man fa'ala hadha bi alihatina innahu lamina adh-dhalimin. Who did this to our gods? He's definitely among those who oppress others. And then some of them came forward and they said, Qalu sami'na fatan. They said, we have heard that there is a young man. His name is Ibrahim. And he is the one who speaks ill about our gods and our idols. Perhaps he's the guy involved. So how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduced Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam in this ayah? Fatan, a young man. Allah did not say Nabiyan or Rasulan or Safiyan or Khalilan or any other title. The title that was given to Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam on this one of the most crucial positions in his life was Fatan. And you know what happened? When people found out that he's the one, they prepared a massive fire to punish Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. And it became a miracle that Allah Azza wa Jal protected Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. But the reason why he was being thrown in that fire, because he took a very firm position against shirk and idol worshipping. Respected brothers and sisters, before I proceed, I ask you a question. And everybody knows the answer, as Mufti Azimuddin already mentioned this name. On social media, the person who's known for his masculinity, the most famous individual, I'm sure you all know his name. Right? People know? Okay, mashallah. When he accepted Islam, many people welcomed him, and it's natural, including myself, we were all delighted, we were all happy. this most Google man, most Google person, very influential. He's, mashallah, Muslim. He accepted Islam. And a lot of people, Muslims, including scholars, they started defending him. There was also a backlash when he accepted Islam. Many think that he is now our role model. Why? Because he presents the type of masculinity that people are afraid of talking about. But I also had this husnul dhan with him. But unfortunately, I have to say, and the talk is not about him, but because he is the most Googled man, and because he is considered an example, a symbol of masculinity, and that's our topic, so I must speak about him. He is not your role model. He is not our role model. He's not someone that we understand masculinity from. He belongs to this red pill movement, which is a reaction of feminism, which is a reaction of leftist ideology, a movement that believes in dehumanizing women. These stars of this movement, they have money, they have power, they have glamour, and this is what the youth of our time want. They think that this guy has power, this guy has glamour and everything, therefore he is our icon. He is our role model. He is the one who would define masculinity. That's one extreme that we are facing today. There is another extreme that we are facing, unfortunately, and that extreme is that there is a war against masculinity by feminists. And when I say war against masculinity, I have many examples to prove this point. For example, American Psychiatric Association recently printed a paper. They presented a paper. The title, the theme of the paper is that traditional masculinity is a mental disorder. So, people who have been practicing and exercising masculinity all throughout history, they have been declared that they all have mental disorder. And they're saying traditional masculinity. It means there is another version, another shade of masculinity that can be accepted. But the one that your fathers, your grandfathers, your great-grandfathers, they have been practicing, that was a mental disorder. The one that many of us practice at home is a mental disorder. So there is a war against masculinity that's happening right now. In this paper, they presented a term, stoicism. And stoicism means that we naturally have sense of competition. We have this sense of dominance. We want to establish dominance. Men are more aggressive. These qualities are declared that they are mental disorders. Now think about this. We live in a society, if you don't have the sense of dominance or competition, the society will collapse. You need these qualities for the survival of society, any society. If you go back in history, it was because of dominance that this country was established. It was because of competition, sense of competition in men, that we have a sports team in almost every field, everywhere. It is because of aggression that men are able to achieve things that women are not able to achieve. So it is necessary for the survival of any society, any human society in any period of history. So if that is the case, then how can this thing be a mental disorder? But this research paper was published, and this is now the psychology of this country is behaving like, is moving in that direction. The second example of war against masculinity is that there is a term, is called Homer Simpsonification. You know Homer Simpson? Famous cartoon. So, in this cartoon, there is a famous character, Simpson. This guy is a father. He's very lazy. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's talking about. That is the picturization of men that is being taught to our young generation, men and women. This is how men should be. This is called Homer Simpsonification. That's another example of war against masculinity. The third example is a famous slogan, teach men not to rape. Imagine if you ask, or if you say that any group of the society, suppose teach Muslims not to be terrorists. If you say this, it's pure Islamophobia. Nobody can allow that. Now, can you say in public, teach LGBT community not to spread HIV? The moment you say that, they will say this guy is homophobic. So what's happening? But when it comes to men, they say that teach men not to rape women. It means that women are being told that men are naturally rapists. They have to be taught not to do this. Just talk about any group of people in the world and you say that teach this group of people not to murder others. That would be the biggest insult. This is the third example of war against masculinity. The fourth example is what we just heard a few moments ago. Spaces that are exclusive to men are shrinking day by day. There is an attack on our space. This space is exclusively for men. We can come here, we can offer salah here, and we can connect ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are a number of masajid in this country and other places where you will say that at the time of Jummah khutbah or regular salawat, women want to come to the main hall. They want to come next to men, side by side. So the spaces that are exclusive to men are shrinking day by day. This is happening now, this is happening at this moment. And you have heard this discussion with all its details. So that's another extreme, unfortunately. On one side, you see extreme version of masculinity that dehumanizes women, that degrade women. They think that women are nothing but object. And on the other side, there is a war against masculinity. So, if we have these two extremes, then what is the solution? What do we do in this case? Some people say that the solution of these two extremes is that we establish complete equality. If we have equality in the society, men and women are 100% equal, problem solved. But they must know that equality is like an empty cup. There is nothing in that cup. Imagine if I have this bottle of water and it's empty. I can fill it with water. I can fill it with milk. I can fill it with wine. I can fill it with urine. The empty cup can accommodate any liquid. What liberalism gives, the idea of equality is like an empty cup. You take this cup and you fill it with whatever you like, you want. Whatever you want to fill with, you can. Islam does not teach that. Islam will give you everything full. If it gives you a cup, it will be filled with milk. It will never be filled with urine or wine. That's the biggest difference. The idea of equality is impossible. There is no way you can implement equality 100%. And I'll give you two examples. The first example is that suppose I'm someone, many times I receive calls and people come to me and ask for their religious guidance, masail, fatwa. So a man comes to me and he says that I want to drink this. What do you say about it? Is it halal? Is it okay for me? And I say, yeah, of course, why not? You can drink it. After some time, another person comes and he says, I want to drink this. Is it okay for me? And I say, no, it is not. Now, if you're a third person observing this conversation, you will think that this Mufti Sahab was not equal with he didn't present equal treatment to these two individuals. His response to the first person is different than his response to the second person. Why is that? He's not fair. He's not doing justice with these two Sa'ilin. But if you ask me, I can provide the justification for this unequal treatment. I can say, well, the first person who asked me for this bottle of water or for this bottle of liquid, I knew that it has no haram ingredient in it. It is absolutely fine for him. Therefore, I said you can drink it. But the second person, I know from before that he's allergic to this drink. So I said it's not okay for you. So when I provided this justification, now this unequal treatment is okay, is acceptable. Another example, imagine you are with your two sons playing in a garden, in a park somewhere. And someone is observing them. These three individuals, the two sons and the father. The father offers one of his sons candy, and he does not give to the second son anything. Now you are observing this and you're saying that's not fair. You should do equal treatment. How come you are not giving the same candy to the other son? So at this moment, it looks like that the father was not just. But if he gives you a justification, he says, well, the reason I gave candy to the first son, because the second one already got his share of the day. Or because there was a race, and I had already told them that whoever will win, I'll give him a candy. So the one I gave was the winner. So that's why I gave him a candy and I didn't give the other one. Now this justification is acceptable and it will justify this unequal treatment. That shows that equality is not always just. Sometimes unequal treatment is also just. Therefore, one who says that no, we have to do equal treatment between men and women all the time, everywhere, that is not right. Why? Because we know that there are, on many different layers and levels, we have differences. Men are different than women, physiologically, psychologically. So if we are different, then how can we be treated in the same way with equality? Islam does not believe in 100% equal treatment. It believes in justice and being fair. Just because women are not treated in the same way as men, that does not mean that women are mafdul and men are afdal. Men have some special status in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, that's not like that. Allah Azza wa Jal will reward both men and women equally. A man offers two rakah, he will get the reward, and if a woman offers 2 rakah at the same time, she will get the same reward. In fact, it is possible that if she has more khushu and khudu, she will get more reward than men. There is no such clause in the laws of Allah that men will enter Jannah first and women will be behind. No. Men and women, whoever has to go to Jannah will go to Jannah. There is no unequal treatment there. When it comes to narrating a hadith, there is no discrimination. There is no unequal treatment. It's not like, oh, you know what, Sayyidah Aisha, she's a woman, we're not accepting her riwayah. Sayyidah Hafsa, she's a woman, we're not accepting her narration. No. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, خُذُوا نِصْفَ دِينِكُمْ عَنِ الْحُمَيْرَاءِ. Learn half of your deen from Humayra, Sayyidah Aisha radiyallahu anha. Sahaba radiyallahu anhum many times had difference of opinion with Ummahatul Mu'mineen, and especially Sayyidah Aisha radiyallahu anha. But none of them ever said that we're rejecting this position because it is coming from a woman. We're rejecting this position because it is coming from Aisha or Hafsa or Zainab radiyallahu anhun. So Islam does not teach that there would be unequal treatment everywhere. But there are certain places that there will be unequal treatment. And it is justified, it is necessary, because of physiological and psychological differences between these two genders. So, we know that physiologically, so in the field of psychology, males on average are more assertive and have higher self-esteem. Female were on average higher than male in extroversion, anxiety, trust, and especially tender-mindedness. Men prefer working with things, and women prefer working with people. This is the psychological difference between men and women, and I'm quoting reliable sites. Also, physiologically, obviously that's pretty obvious. Male typically have proportionately more muscle mass, more bone mass, and a lower percentage of body fat than women. So physiologically and psychologically we are different. And if we are different, then of course we will be treated differently. And this different or unequal treatment is justified. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. Male is not like female. Allah didn't say الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. They are equal. Allah says they're not equal. لَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. Dhakar meaning male is not like female. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is establishing this fundamental idea in the Quran. And not only in this ayah, in multiple ayat that inshallah some of them I will mention. So now the question is that perfect equality is not the solution. Then what is the solution? The solution is that men exercise their masculinity that is mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and women exercise those sifat that they learn from the lives of Ummahatul Mu'mineen and Azwajun Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If we learn and we seek our deen from Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, from his companions, and women learn their deen from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his wives, problem solved. This is how our ancestors, Muslim ancestors, used to live. This is how societies back in the days used to operate. But now that we are here in the Western world, things have changed completely. That is because now we are under the influence of liberalism, feminism, and many other isms. We think they are teaching this to our kids. When they go to schools, when our youth go to college, they're learning this over there. Obviously, if they're spending 7, 8, 9 hours in an environment that will install liberalism and feminism in their minds, when they will come home, even if the parents are practicing Muslims, they're not going to change their worldview. Their worldview is being formed in colleges, in schools. They will think everything from that perspective, from that worldview, from that paradigm. And that's why it becomes so difficult to convince our youth that no, this is the right way. This is how you understand. This is how you live your life. You don't live your life according to liberal filth. You don't live your life according to feministic ideas. It becomes so difficult to teach this to our youth. Why? Because they're already part of the system for several years. A young man comes out of that system when he is around 22, 23, or 25 years old. All his life, half of his life is in that system. How in the world he will change? He cannot. So the only solution is that we learn our rujuliyah as men. And women learn their unuthiyah from the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But now the question is that, what is rujuliyah? And how can we learn that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions many ayat defining rujuliyah. Several ayat. But before I cite some of those ayat, must remember that every man is a male, but not every male is a man. You have certain qualities that will make you a man. manhood requires certain characteristics, certain traits that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran. Many of them. The first one is that we learn from the story of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. What did he do? He didn't compromise with his deen. He didn't compromise with that batil. He saw idol worshipping happening in his community. He initially tried to convince them against it. He started talking about it. People didn't pay attention. He went and he broke all those idols. You don't want to talk? Now we will talk. This is futuwah. This is manhood that Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam exercised in this story. He knew the consequences. He knew that I might be killed. I will be punished, the severest punishment. But he didn't stop there. He said, I have to make my point. I will debate with these guys. I will prove that these idols that you're worshipping cannot benefit you, cannot harm you. Because they're not even able to talk. They're not even able to communicate. And Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam made his point very clear. When people realized that we will lose in the debate, they then prepared this massive fire to punish Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. This is the first mawqif, first position or first characteristic of futuwa and rujula, manhood, mentioned in the Quran. In another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and by the way, in this ayah, the second characteristic is an-nushu fillah, that you become well-wisher of others for the sake of Allah, even if you have to sacrifice something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَجَاءَ رَجُلٌ مِّنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ يَسْعَى. وَجَاءَ رَجُلٌ مِّنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ يَسْعَى. A man came from the other side of the city. And he says, إِنَّ الْمَلَأَ يَأْتَمِرُونَ. O Musa alayhi salatu wassalam, this group is doing conspiracy against you. Therefore you leave the city. I am your well-wisher. إِنِّي لَكَ مِنَ النَّاصِحِينَ. I am your well-wisher. So he did well. He was a well-wisher of Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. And he showed bravery. That is called an-nushu fillah. That is the second quality. The third quality that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions is speaking truth. If you know that this is haqq, then stand for it. If you know that that is batil, stand against it. Even if you think that I will be cancelled, even if you think that people will curse me, even if you think that nobody will accept what I'm saying, but if you think that it is haqq and you want to be a man, then this is what you need to do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran that there was a man in the majlis of Fir'aun, and Fir'aun was going to kill Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, and he says, would you kill somebody just because he's saying Rabbi Allah? My Rabb is Allah? That is his crime. So he was trying to convince Fir'aun. He spoke up in the favor of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam in front of Fir'aun. Same Fir'aun who killed all those magicians who accepted Islam. This guy was there. He witnessed that incident. Yet he had this courage to speak up in the favor of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Today, when we know that something is true, we don't want to speak about it because we are afraid of this cancel culture. So the third trait or characteristic of manhood is that it stand up for truth. Another characteristic, and there are many, another characteristic of manhood is focus and dedicate. Focus on your goal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, رِجَالٌ لَا تُلْهِيهِمْ تِجَارَةٌ وَلَا بَيْعٌ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَإِقَامِ الصَّلَاةِ وَإِيتَاءِ الزَّكَاةِ. They are men, rijalun. They are such men that tijaratun or bay'un, trade or transaction, do not distract them from remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, establishing salah, giving zakat. They are fully committed and focused on their goal. And finally, and we can go on and on, many characteristics, but what we need to understand today is another ayah in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and by the way, this is that ayah that liberals don't want to listen, but it exists in the Quran, and they cannot deny, because if they deny, they're out. So, the ayah is, الرِّجَالُ قَوَّامُونَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ. People say, you know what? We have a right to reinterpret the Quran. So when you say we have a right to interpret the Quran, what is your interpretation? Your interpretation at least has to match with the word. قَوَّامُونَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that men are in charge of women. They're in charge of women. What does that mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established this principle that men have authority, and I use this word authority, over women. And it is not bad for women. Women shouldn't think that, oh, men were given authority over us, so it looks like we are second-class citizens. No. Hierarchy is important for every system. A system will collapse if you don't have hierarchy there. Imagine if you live in this country, you need to have a president. You need to have his people around him who will advise him, who will do other tasks. In any country, you need to have a president or prime minister. You need to have a king that will take care of the political system. This is called hierarchy. If people decide that we're not going to have any president, we're not going to have any prime minister, we're not going to have any ruler, the society will collapse. Society will not survive. Hierarchy is must. Not even in countries, in companies. You need to have a CEO and CEO and then board of directors and other employees. There is a whole hierarchical system. It has to be followed, because if you don't, then the company will collapse. So every system requires hierarchy. Family is a very important system. And if that system requires hierarchy, then family also requires hierarchy. Hierarchy means that someone has to be in the position of authority. People say that, well, you know, we accept hierarchy in governance, in democracy, because men and women equally have an opportunity to become the ruler. We're talking about politics in America, where people say that, oh, men and women have equal opportunity to become the president, in a country where a woman tried and never became successful to be the president. But let's say that constitutionally, in democracy, a man and a woman have equal right to become the head of the state. So no problem, sometime men would become, sometime women would become. This is what usually people argue. But in Islamic family system, authority is given to men and not women. Women will never have this authority. So that's not fair. The response to this objection or this confusion is that even in democracy, even in politics or in companies, you're given a role of authority because of your competence, because of your salahiyah or your capacity, not because who you are and what is your gender. A party would nominate you its candidate for presidential candidate based on how many votes you will generate. Me and you, imagine if next election we say, I want to be the president of the United States. They're not going to give us an opportunity. I might get 2 votes. But people who can generate millions of votes, they have salahiyah, they have isti'dad, they have capacity to run in elections. Whether you're men or women, it is all about your capacity. It's all about your capability, your isti'dad. You're not selected as a CEO because your gender is X, Y, Z. And we have 103 genders in 2023, by the way. So you're not selected as a CEO because of your gender, because of your male or female. They select you as a CEO because they know that this person can generate millions of dollars for the company, and the company will be successful. The company will survive. Not only survive, will be successful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, and He knows who has more salahiyah and isti'dad and capacity to run the family. He knows that it's men who has salahiyah built in, who has isti'dad and capacity to run the family, and therefore he was placed in the authoritative position. How do we know that? There is a concept, it's called hypergamy. Women are naturally hypergamous, which means that when they select their mate, they make sure that this mate, this partner, is better and superior than us, whether in lineage, in reputation, in finance, in education, in look, in whatever standard they want to follow, but he has to be better than us. It's naturally in them. The evidence is that imagine if there is a woman and she has two options, two men. She can pick any. Both of them come from the same family. Family has reputation. They both completed the same degree, same age. Everything is same. One is, and they say make same amount of money. But one of them is shorter and the other is tall. So the woman will say, well, I'll go with the taller one. Why? Because all women are naturally hypergamous. Hypergamy is in their genes. This is a biological fact. It cannot be denied. So if that is the case, and by the way, there is a research, and I will read that research to you. It was done by a woman called, it's a woman, mashallah. So Elizabeth Cashdan, and she is in the Department of Anthropology, University of Utah. She writes, females in a wide variety of species, insects, birds, mammals, prefer males with resources. And the same is true for human. Bus's cross-cultural questionnaire, is a name of a guy, Bus. Bus's cross-cultural questionnaire study of 37 societies showed that women in all of them placed a higher value on the financial prospect of a prospective mate than men did. So this study is done in the University of Utah. So we're not saying this, we're not making up. It's there, it's a biological fact. So if women are hypergamous, they have hypergamy, and they prefer male who has higher status, who has more power, who has more wealth, then they are saying that, well, since you have more power and wealth, therefore you have authority. This is what Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran. الرِّجَالُ قَوَّامُونَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ. Men are in charge of women. And what is the reason? بِمَا أَنفَقُوا. Because what the money, because of wealth that they spend on them. Because of wealth. Because they have more money and more power. That's why they are in charge of women. So respected brothers and sisters, hierarchy is must. Without hierarchy, every system will collapse. This is the first proposition. The second proposition is that women are hypergamous and submit to the authority of men. What is the result? Men have authority over women. It is a clear, straightforward argument. It's not rocket science. But women should not think that we are a second-class citizens. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not put us in that authoritative position. Why? Remember, brothers and sisters, that man is put to a trial because of his authority. And women are put to a trial because of their obedience. They will be judged by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whether they were obedient to the one who had authority. And men will be judged by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whether he used or misused his authority. Having more authority, meaning more responsibility. Having more responsibility means more accountability. Nobody wants to be accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for women, it's a win-win game. Imagine if you live in a country and it's a kingdom where the king is not elected, is selected. A lot of people can wish I were the king. But then you compromise with this idea. I don't belong to this royal family. So only a member of the royal family will become the king. And we have to live in this country as subjects. We compromise with this idea. We don't think that it is an unfair system designed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this guy gets to become the king and we're all subjects. We don't think that way. This is how the system will work. One has to take the role. One has to become the ruler. So if as subjects we don't think that being the subjects of a king is unfair, we don't think that way, then women shouldn't think that if we are under the authority of men, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not do justice with us. Remember, a king, when he will be presented before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will be asked by Allah about his governance on his subjects. Were you fair with your people? Were you looking after them? Were you taking care of them? Were you distributing wealth properly? Were you giving rights to those that it belongs? These questions will be asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. King will be in trouble that day. And subjects, will they be asked the same question? No. Because they were never put in that role. They were never put in that authoritative position. So they will not face these questions. A man, when he will be presented before Allah, will be asked by Allah, how did you look after your family? How did you do the tarbiyah? Were you fair with your wife and your children or not? Were you working hard to provide them or not? What was your spiritual position? What were you doing for their spiritual upbringing? These were the questions that will be asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A woman will never be asked these questions because she is never put in this role. So if we are subjects of a king and we are not bothered by that, then why women should be bothered by that? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, though the hadith is not related to it, but it's related to obedience. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says that أطيعوا ولو أمر عليكم عبد حبشي. You must follow even if an Abyssinian slave becomes your ruler. Even if he becomes your Amirul Mu'mineen, your job is to follow. You will not be asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that how did you allow this guy to become the Amirul Mu'mineen? You will be asked whether you obeyed the command of the government or not. So women will be judged based on their obedience and men will be judged based on their authority. Men having authority does not make them better. Women becoming under the authority of their men does not make them lower. It is very important. The feminist idea of marriage believes that marriages, we are related to each other, men and women, they're related to each other according to partnership model. Men and women, they are partners of each other in this system. But Islamically, that's not correct. Men and women, as husband and wife, they're not partners of each other. This relationship is not based on partnership model. It is based on authoritative model. That is the reason why a woman does not have a right to pronounce talaq and she is out. She does not have that right. A man has that right. A man can say talaq and marriage is over. Because he has authority over a woman. Does that mean that woman is stuck for the rest of her life? No, not at all. She has an option of khula. She has an option of faskhun nikah. And there are other scenarios. She can always go to the court. One can say, well, that's not fair. She is stuck for the rest of her life. You are giving one right to men and you're not giving the same right to women. Well, we have already understood that 100% equality is against common sense. Think about this. And after we have learned the psychological difference between men and women, if talaq, by pronouncing the word talaq, if this authority was given to women, half of these men would be divorced today. This is true. Psychologically, and I'm not criticizing women here because this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us. Then why ratio of divorce is increasing? That is because we're not practicing Islam. We're learning our values from liberalism. How many times you've heard divorce cases from in the third generation before you? Your grandparents, great-grandparents. The word divorce was unheard of in that culture. You get married and that's it. You will live your life forever with that person. But now, in practicing Muslim households, the ratio of talaq and divorce is increasing. Why? Because we're not learning, we're not taking our deen from the original source. We're taking our deen from colleges, from schools, from, unfortunately, and I'm not criticizing that, MSA crowd. That is very important. You need to stay in touch with ulama. If ulama are there, ahlan wa sahlan, very good. If they're not there, you come to the ulama and ask them. This is your responsibility because it is your family. It is about your future. It's about your children. You have to take care of your family and your children. Yes, ulama are there. They learn this deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that they can preserve it, they can protect it, they can spread it. But if you run away from them, alim will not chase you. You have to come in these types of setups, these types of programs and environments to be connected with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The road to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam goes from madaris and masajid. It's not out there, it's here. So this is what you need to learn, respected brothers and sisters. And by the way, my dear sisters, I would like to say this. If you want to be real women, you have to abandon all the germs of feminism. Forget about it. Think that it is the biggest evil that is destroying your life. And my dear brothers, if you want to be men, then you have to learn the traits of manhood from the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. If you do not establish authority that Allah Azza wa Jal has given you, then your family will collapse. You will not be able to save your next generation. You will not be able to protect the iman of your next generation. Don't be fooled and deceived by those liberal ideas out there. And unfortunately, some Muslim names will be there spreading those liberal ideas. You know what? I do not spread this cancel culture. But these are the people that you need to cancel. These are the people you need to avoid. These are the people that you need to unsubscribe. These are the people that you need to believe that liberalism is coming from them. And if that is your conviction, this is your faith, and that is your iman, I guarantee that you will be raised as men and women will be raised as women on the day of judgment, insha'Allah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullahu khairal jaza wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.